2FM. Game On's Fantasy Football.
And you're very welcome along to the Game On Fantasy Football podcast. It is Game Week 29 and I am joined on the line by Paul Caffrey, all the way from a secret location in England. Paul, how are you?
Yes, very well, Andrew. How are you? Are you good?
I'm in good form. Dying to get back into a bit of fantasy action this weekend.
There's a few headaches coming this week. It's a difficult game week.
It is a very difficult game week, and it'll be a quite shortened podcast, but we've got a lot of flagging to do for future game weeks as well in this pod. Right, before we crack into it, a rundown on what happened in game week 28. Everton beat West Ham by 1-0. Lukaku got the goal, the assist from Baines. What a return for Lukaku. Fulham 1, Chelsea 3. And all the goals in a very short space of time from Andre Schürrle. 2 assists for Hazard and 1 for Torres as well. And Heitinga got his first Fulham goal with an assist from Bent. Hull City were high-flying before this game week, but they went down 4-1 to Newcastle United. And that was in Hull, and their goal came from Davies. But the Newcastle goals, 2 for Sissoko and 1 each for Anita and Remy. So Newcastle flying there. Alan Pardew also flying off his rocker and into Irish midfielder David Mailer. Stoke City 1-0 winners over Arsenal. The goal by Republic of Ireland striker Jonathan Walters, and from the penalty spot. And great 3 points for Stoke City, and they've really done well at the Britannia this season against all the big guys. Southampton 0, Liverpool 3. The goals from Gerrard, Sterling and Suarez. 2 assists for Suarez as well. He's just awesome. And
great performance by Liverpool, actually. They played very, very well in that game. Yeah,
against a good Southampton team. Aston Villa, they beat Norwich 4-1. 2 goals for Benteke. Bakuna got 1. An own goal from Basong. And great performance for Aston Villa against Norwich, and a bit of needle between the clubs, the Lambert connection. Swansea 1, Crystal Palace 1. De Guzman with the goal for Swansea, and Murray got the goal for Crystal Palace. So that was points shared there. And Spurs 1-0 winners over Cardiff City. Soldaldo got the goal finally. The assists from guess who? Adebayor, and they get all 3 points and march on. Time for Game Week 29. Alright, it is a shortened game week, as we said, Paul, and I think rather than do sort of 3 focus games, we're just going to quickly focus on all 5 games remaining in Game Week 29. So where do you want to start? At the top, West Brom and Man United?
Yeah, absolutely. We might as well kick things off there. Looking at it, I suppose, the game week as a whole, there is only 5 games being played, so most people are going to struggle to field a team this week, let alone a strong team.
Yes.
It should also be considered if we look at the 11 most owned players in the league, 7 of them will have no involvement in the game week this week at all. Only your Chelsea, your Tottenham, and your Man United players are the ones that are going to be there, which have a high rate of ownership, which is your Hazard, Mata, Adebayor, and co. So, looking at West Brom obviously beat Manchester United early in the season. They got a good 2-1 win at Old Trafford. It hasn't all been West Brom's way this season. They've struggled. We saw the change of manager hasn't quite brought the performances that perhaps the Baggies fans and maybe the management would have thought. And obviously Manchester United are, I would dare say, falling into turmoil. It's becoming each game that goes by, it's becoming more and more of a struggle, and they're all but out of the Champions League game with a return home match against Olympiacos coming up. So morale it's a little bit low at Old Trafford, to say the least. However, looking at this, I would not be jumping up and down expecting a lot of points.
Well, Pepe Mel still hasn't had a win for West Brom, has he? So
hasn't been great. I mean, basically, if you have players playing for either teams, you're going to have to play them just to feel the team this week. Juan Mata is a player who kind of stands out. We've kind of had mixed reviews, although he has gotten assists.
Yeah, I've given him bad reviews. You've given him good reviews. That sort of covers our ass.
Well, there you go. That's it. He has been dropped from the Spanish squad. Obviously, Spain play Italy in a repeat of the Euro 2012 final. It's really a huge concern for him. He obviously wants to be a part of the squad, if not the team, in the World Cup. Only a couple of months away now. So he's been obviously rested from the Champions League, being cup tied. He's now dropped from the Spanish squad. So rest is absolutely there for him. And the other side of it is he needs to put in the performances that are going to get him a trip to the World Cup. So I would be optimistic that he could actually do it against West Brom, because they're the type of team that a good slick ball player will be able to find some space and hopefully expose any gaps that are there leading to fantasy points. So he's someone, if you were short on players and you're looking at bringing a player in from this game, it will be Mata for me. Obviously, then looking around the rest of the team, you're going to play whoever you can bring in, whoever you have.
Yeah, I mean this game where you literally are. It's not going to be about choice. You're literally going to play whoever you can play, whoever's left on your squad, because that's sort of a game week.
Yeah,
there is no choice here. The only choice is to get as many players on the field as you can, and I'll ask you a question. I'm going to ask you this question at the start, right? Do you think any player is worth incurring a deduction of 4 points for?
I think there's one or two players there, but it's difficult to say. There's no one who you'll say is nailed on and absolutely bring them in. Even if you were to say, like, maybe people might be screaming Wayne Rooney's name, despite the fact he's playing a little bit deeper. He's only 2 yellow cards away from being banned. Now, we'll run through the suspensions a little bit later on just to flag that with people. But even that kind of move for that big-name player could cause issues. And then, obviously, there's a lot of speculation around Van Persie and how, if he's happy at the club, and if, and I suppose some of the comments he's making in the Dutch media aren't helping things. So even on that, I'd be a little bit. I wouldn't be jumping out to bring him in. However,
I think he's going to like the next manager, Louis van Gaal. They'll get on really well, won't they?
Well, that's the word on the street.
And come here, I know you're a season ticket holder at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
You go to games home and away. So I'm hearing Hernandez as well. Basically, has said it's great to be playing for Mexico. At least my national side actually care about me, as opposed to my club. So there seems to be a lot of unrest at Old Trafford in the squad room.
There seems to be massive unrest. There seems to be man management issues. There's tactic issues. There's a lot of very, very strange smaller decisions which aren't really being picked up on by the mass media. Obviously, there's goalkeeping errors which aren't helping matters.
And if there's 8 players that have to come in, David Moyes is basically saying there's 8 players in this dressing room that aren't good enough to play for Manchester United. And there's a whole squad of players looking back going, I could be amongst that 8.
Yeah, actually, I mean, a lot of the guys know. I mean, the whole defence needs to go. We know that. Obviously, I mean, I don't recall the last time a big name player actually bowed out of Manchester United when Manchester United needed them. Now, obviously, Nemanja Vidic, captain, has done that as well. So there's huge amount of problems at Manchester United, and David Moyes is the man who needs time, and the jury is out whether he can deliver if he's given that time.
Milan isn't bad though, is it? If you're in Nemanja Vidic, you could handle a little trip to a little apartment in Lake Como, Paul. Some nice bit of pasta for lunch.
It's a nice
spin down the motorway in the Maserati to training.
Yeah, that'd be all right, wouldn't it? If you think about it, 34, it's a good age to go and do it. But the point is, normally that's something which is the club controls as opposed to the player, especially when he's the captain and he's coming out and making that statement. I know people might draw parallels to the way Carlos Puyol has done a similar piece at Barcelona. But again, it's kind of not how Manchester United have done things over the last number of years. So I suppose if we're looking at Moyes, yes, he needs time, but he's not making things easy for himself in these kind of smaller mistakes which are causing more frustrations. And the next couple of home games will be quite interesting to see if the crowd starts to turn against them, because in fairness, everyone has, as much as they might be a little bit quiet, not cheering on the team because it's little to cheer, there's been very, very few dissenting voices on the terraces. It's more kind of murmurs and people trying to stay positive. I don't know how much longer that's going to last if you consider the run games. Olympiacos okay, a miracle might happen. They might get the right result there. It's highly unlikely. But then you've got Liverpool and Manchester City in short succession. So, I mean, in short, I wouldn't be even thinking of bringing in Manchester United players into the fantasy team for medium to long term, because it's not about the big names, it's not about the clubs, it's about the form and the fixtures, and neither of those are on the Red Devil side at the moment.
All right. So, West Brom, we mentioned them. We didn't really get into any players. There's nothing really in West Brom that you're going to specifically point out. So we should probably move on to the next game.
Yeah, so the next game probably sees the two nicest clubs in the Premier League play each other. Obviously, we've got Cardiff City hosting Fulham.
Second bottom, host bottom. Yeah. So Cardiff, when I suppose Solskjaer came in, there was question marks. Can he turn Cardiff around? Arguably, it's not really happening for them. If you were looking at, I suppose, Cardiff players, I mean, Marshall is one that draws the eye in goals. He can come up with the odd clean sheet. Cocker is kind of the star defender for Cardiff. The former Swansea City loanee from Tottenham has actually caught the glance of Brendan Rodgers, who of course managed him in that season he had at Swansea, and it does all look like that he is going to go to Liverpool at the end of the season to shore up the defence there. So 5.2 million is a little bit expensive, but he is a threat in corners. We've seen him score a couple of goals this season from that, and also a player out to impress, to probably look to get a move away from Cardiff, which is terrible considering Cardiff has invested £10 million in him only in the summer gone. So really, I'd be looking at potentially a clean sheet for Cardiff. Obviously, there are some other cheaper players, so Turner is only 4.1. Or you could look at maybe even bringing in John. He's 3.9 million. He could do a job for you for the week. Obviously, Zaha exploded onto the scene, but he's kind of drifted, hasn't had as much of an impact and hasn't played as much since. So it's still, you're looking at maybe a Craig Noonan, and obviously up front you've got Fraser Campbell or Jones. He is, I suppose, he's worth a look. He was playing a lot of. He basically was playing since he joined the club for the last couple of times, but only played 18 minutes last week. So that's a bit of a concern that he only came on. So, and then obviously on the Fulham side of things, I mean, look, Fulham notoriously bad on the road. Well, Fulham has to be said now. You have the Maggot. Maggot is taking charge of Fulham. And so, I mean, we might have to start looking at Fulham in a different way. I know they weren't great against Chelsea, but they were certainly very organised, and they were getting at Chelsea. They held Chelsea for large parts of the game. So, I have to say, I think Fulham are about to go on a bit of a run, and I think the run is going to start against second from bottom Cardiff City. I think this is. I think Cardiff aren't going to keep a clean sheet. I think Fulham are going to win this one 2-1.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at that side of things, obviously, I mean, the couple of players that catch the eye, Heitinga at the back, you don't think a clean sheet's going to happen, maybe not for this week. Then it's really a question mark. Do you go for Darren Bent? It looks like he's going to be the man who's going to get the nod. Obviously, he got an assist there last week, which was nice.
What about Rodallega? He didn't play against Chelsea, but he did play against West Brom, didn't he? So
yeah,
he could be.
He didn't play a full game. I mean, Rodallega, we know what he can do from his Wigan days. He hasn't gotten a look in yet, and I haven't seen anything to suggest that he will. I think it's interesting with the new manager in place. And obviously, we saw Jose Mourinho bigging him up and saying he's got a really, really great CV, and which he has. And you rightly pointed out that they caused Chelsea problems last week before going to that defeat. However, looking at players to bring in this week, you take a punt. He's kind of been in and out.
Yeah, so, but he's played with this manager before. He has history with Maggot, and he's played 90 minutes in the last two. So I could think he could be. I think he could be a sort of fulcrum of that midfield. You've also got Holtby, so. Sidwell and Parker as well, playing quite high up. Richardson 4.8. There's a bit of value there if you have a Fulham player.
Although sadly they've kind of looked to find Richardson at the back a little bit lately. Although he does still get forward a lot, so that might not be so much of a deterrence. But look, there's value.
It's difficult to remember because they've had so many new managers. It's difficult to know to realise who the manager's favourite. And yet we'll have to see that settle down. Yeah. Anyway, I think we might get a bit of a reaction. They probably knew they weren't realistically going to beat Chelsea, and I'd say he's definitely targeted. He said I think he needs to win at least 6 games. This has to be one of the 6. Has to be. Yeah. All right, we move on. Crystal Palace and Southampton.
So again, you have to be fancying the Southampton side of things. But if you take Crystal Palace first, I mean, I have Speroni. I'm going to play Speroni this week, and then I suppose Tom Ince. He's on the radar. Obviously, he had a very good performance a few weeks ago against West Brom with the goal and the assist, and so he's someone at $5.5 million might be worth bringing in, because obviously it was played very, very good for Blackpool in the Championship and had done a lot of good stuff there. So it'll be interesting to see if he can continue to replicate it in the Premier League. Other than that, then I wouldn't really be too pushed bringing in any other kind of Crystal Palace players. It's kind of more the Southampton side, which is the attraction to me.
Apparently, he said he was going to find 2 of his players for diving, Tony Pulis, and he named Shamak as one of them, and they went in, then they couldn't find the dive. So anyway, poor old Shamak. And on the Southampton side of things, obviously we know our favourites: Lallana, Lambert, Rodriguez.
Yeah. Look, they are the players. I suppose a word of warning.
What about the back, Yoshida or Fonte?
Probably go for Yoshida just on price, but Fonte is kind of he's a bigger goal threat. We've seen him pop up over the last couple of weeks, so if he can get there, that's all well and good. And then myself, I've got Luke Shaw on the team. I'll be a big fan of his. And what we do see is something to call out is international form generally carries through the Premier League, and we saw how emotional and how delighted he was to get the call up for the England game against Denmark. So even just the buzz of playing international football, I'd be interested to see how that will carry into this game. And we'll call it a word of warning. Stephen Davis was playing a little bit further forward lately, and he'll probably drop back a little bit with Ramirez possibly coming back into the team. So I mean, and then obviously, you've got Lambert, you've got Rodriguez. It's a case of I suppose 2 more players would be delighted to be involved in the England team, looking at getting goals. So you wouldn't expect Southampton to get a lot of goals at Crystal Palace, which is very frustrating, because looking at these 5 games, this could possibly be the lowest scoring Fantasy Premier League game week in history. So it's slim pickings. Slim pickings.
Let's move on to another really high scoring fixture. It has to be. Loads of goals I can see in Norwich and Stoke City.
Yeah, so I mean that's it. Yeah, you say with a laugh. I mean, on that side of things, I've very little faith in Norwich. They kind of say they are very good at home. They're very good at keeping clean sheets at home. So you would potentially think this could be a board draw, because Stoke aren't exactly free scoring, and they have had some great results, obviously, against Arsenal in recent weeks, and Manchester United as well.
Will Martin Olsen make this game, will he? He's 75% with a shoulder injury.
I mean, you would expect him to be available. He is a player who did feature in the tips on Fantasy.
I brought him in 2 weeks ago. I brought him in 2 weeks ago for this game week, and he bloody well gets an injury. Typical.
He goes and does that. You should have told us that you were doing that.
I know, I'm sorry. The Nexus, that is Andrew, who strikes again.
Nexus, you're good at that now. Looking at that, Stoke actually might be worth investment over the next couple of weeks, because obviously they're away to Norwich, but then they're home to West Ham, away to Aston Villa, home to Hull, difficult game away to Chelsea, but then they're at home to Newcastle. So if you look at that, they're playing against a number of teams that they could look at picking points up from, particularly the home games, West Ham, Hull and Newcastle. When you consider that they're turning over the likes of Arsenal and Manchester United, it's not beyond doubt to be looking at that. So maybe a Stoke defender, or perhaps even, looking at, being a bit cheeky, taking Walters, but Charlie Adam would probably be the man to go for, provided he doesn't get a ban, which is possible considering his tackle over the weekend.
Yeah, I can actually, just to confirm now, Stokes Charlie Adam handed 3-game ban after being found guilty of that. So
Wow.
there you have it.
Okay, that blows that out of the water.
Yeah.
3-game ban. That must
Yeah.
be just off the press, was it?
Literally just on Twitter as we're speaking.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, there you go. That's
Live
the
news.
The
Live.
wonders of Twitter
Yeah.
coming to our aid again. Okay, so again, yeah, Stoke interesting. Now, without Charlie Adams, that changes things because he's been pretty much the fulcrum of their team and has been excellent for them. So, another difficult week. But yeah, a Stoke player for a couple of weeks is probably worth an investment this week.
Bradley Johnson.
Look,
Snodgrass. Robert
there's no
Snodgrass
harm.
is a great player, but also has a 75% chance of playing with a wrist injury. So there's a good
Easy
few there.
now, Andrew. They'll be playing nice here. Norwich get clean sheets at home. I think they've got 10 this season, and they're on a run. They put a number of consecutive clean sheets at home, so it's well worth considering the likes of a Norwich defender. And then in midfield, they don't score enough goals for me, so okay, if Johnson's interested, 4.4 million, maybe throw him in instead of your Januzajs or some of your Sterlings, but medium to long term, probably not. Oh, little dance. So yeah, I think that probably sums up that game really. I mean, it's a very, very tough game week, and I can see why Phil just kind of ducked and dived and rolled out of this one.
Yeah, it was good timing. He's well known for it. Stoke City. I mean, again, not a whole lot. Adam, obviously now his information block is about to go red, so you can not think of him. And there's not really a whole lot to recommend. Obviously, as we said, Peter Crouch finding a bit of form at last, and he is 5.6 if you're looking for a bargain. Obviously, anything you have, you're going to play today or this week, but nothing really you're going to bring in for the long term.
No, and that's it. I mean, Stoke they have a bit of long-term potential, but there's probably not a whole lot more to say about them, really.
Right. There will be a bit of interest in the last of our games we're going to talk about, Chelsea and Tottenham Hotspur. So, Jose hasn't said anything in the press of the last few days that I remember. I presume David Luiz is going to use Carlos Puyol's hairdresser when he moves over to Barcelona. There's a gig worth having. What about Chelsea this week?
Look, it's Chelsea and Tottenham. This is a game I'm hoping we'll bring in some goals. Obviously, it's the evening kickoff.
You know what I asked earlier on about, are there any players in the game worth a 4-point deduction? I'm thinking maybe there's one or two here. Yeah, no, you're bang on. I think Eden Hazard and Emmanuel Adebayor are the two players who are worth it. Obviously, Shirley is coming off the back of that hat-trick, which is good stuff. And at 6.9 million, he's good value to come in. But that Chelsea midfield has kind of been rotated and changed around a little bit. So this could be the week that Willian comes in and Shirley gets rested or whatever. I mean, you think that it would be madness for that to happen. But these are kind of the ways that you have to consider, because obviously Chelsea need to keep their team fresh, and they've got the Champions League coming up in a week or two's time, and most of their players are playing international football. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Then the other side, as we spoke about, Manchester United's Juan Mata being dropped from the squad, the Spain squad. We also have Fernando Torres, who's been left out of the squad as well, which would be a big concern for him, considering Brazil's Costa has actually is taken Spanish citizenship and is now making his debut. So there'll be massive concerns whether he'll actually get into the squad or not. So, I mean, Jose has been shown a bit of faith. Might be worth a punt. I don't think Torres is worth it. I think it's just a sad story that he had a couple of great years and it seems to have passed him by a little bit. But he is still a good striker, and he is still someone who'll pop up with goals here and there and worth having in your team. And at 8 million, strange to say, is probably a fair market value for the man. So if you're looking at 3 Chelsea players, will I play a Chelsea defender this week? Absolutely. Chelsea could easily go out and get the clean sheets here, but then equally they've got that attacking threat. So obviously Tim Cahill possesses it. We know John Terry does. Obviously Ivanovic has popped up with goals this season over the years, and then as Piliqueta, he probably isn't quite there on the attacking side of things. But again, he's a cheap way into a clean sheet defence of 5.5 million. Yeah, for me, you've got to have Hazard. This is the week that's in it. And then, I mean, picking a third Chelsea player, it's difficult. You can make the argument for Torres.
a lot of people will have cash to do so and will go and do that.
So they are the 5 games. I mean, it is a tough one. It is a tough one. Apart from Adebayor, are there any strikers? Are there any strikers that you'd look to bring in?
In the Tottenham side of things,
yeah, because you spoke about Adebayor and you spoke about Rooney earlier on. Apart from those 2 big ones, are there any? Would you veer towards Southampton?
For me, I probably would go Southampton. But look, there's no big name players to be looking at bringing in. I mean, Kenwyne Jones is one who is interesting. Obviously, we need to do a little bit more digging to ensure that he's going to play the 90 minutes. And then Darren Bent is a bit of a punt. However, he's probably the most informed striker of all of those strikers that we're speaking of. So it really is one of those things, because don't forget, you're not just talking about this week, you're talking about, I suppose, the coming weeks as well. And it may not help you. There's no players with easy fixtures.
All right. Listen, we're going to wrap it up now. But before we do, coming up now, Captain's Picks. Right, Paul, very quickly, Chelsea player. Eden Hazard.
Look, I'm not going to delay you here. It's Eden Hazard all day. There are very few other captain choices. You could maybe argue for a Southampton player, but let's face it, we're all going to go Chelsea. If I wasn't going Hazard, for whatever reason, I'd be throwing it on Adebayor's arm, because the man is playing some fantastic football at the minute. Probably 2 things worth flagging just before we do head off is obviously game week 31. There's 15 games, just 10 teams playing twice. And within that, you do actually have West Ham playing 2 home games and Newcastle playing 2 home games. And then obviously Liverpool, actually, they catch the eye when they host Sunderland and they play Cardiff as well. So just, if you are looking at selling players, it might be worth having a look at the game week 31 fixtures. Make sure you're not selling a player who actually has a handy double coming up. And then if we look at the suspension side of things, if you hit 10 yellow cards before game week 34, you're looking at getting a ban. So that's obviously a couple of weeks away. It's game week 29 now. And if we look at the list of players, obviously, if your man Olsen recovers from that shoulder injury, he comes back, gets 1 more yellow card, he'll be suspended again. So that's another thing to be mindful of there. Apart from that, some notable people, obviously, we've got Ramirez of Chelsea, Louise of Chelsea, Shamak from the Crystal Palace, and then Rooney of Man United and Walters of Stoke. They're all on 8 yellow cards, so it's not inconceivable to think that they might get 2 yellow cards between now and game week 34. If that happens, that's another ban. So this is just another very, very small variable to be considering before you hit that make transfers button and this incredibly difficult, incredibly frustrating fantasy football week.
Don't we just love it? Paul, thank you for that. Thank you for the guidance. That was your guide through a very short and difficult and confusing game week 29, but the confusion is yet to come in the next couple of game weeks. Paul, thank you very much for that, and we should say goodbye. Live time will be at 10:30 on the Twitter machine, as it is every week on a Saturday morning between 10:30 and 11:30. I presume fantasy looming man Phil McGrath will be in for that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, listen, have a good one. And, of course, I hope you do really badly in game week 29. See you next week.
Yeah, I might get 4 points. If I get 5, I'll flag you. Go on, take it easy, mate.
See you, Paul.